All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So um, today we have a new circus at home skill to discuss. So a couple of you were not here last time. So just to let you know what this session is all about. So you all know that I come from a performance background in theater and circus and lots of different things. And for the summer, I've been teaching a circus camp. And it's been great because it's the first time that I have been able to teach circus in person in a while. And it got me thinking that because part of this summer camp was done virtually, and last year I had to teach the whole camp virtually. And so one of the big things about the circus is that it involves equipment of some kind. So when you can't do a circus class in person, it can feel kind of like, well, you don't get to use any of the stuff. So how are we going to practice if we can't do any of the stuff? So what I did was I came up with some things that you can do at home to make circus at your house. So it can be stuff that you have around the house or stuff that you can get very easily and inexpensively to make your own circus equipment at home so you can practice your skills. One of the things that I love about circus is that when we talk about circus, we're not just talking about learning the skills. So I teach circus to hundreds of students every year, and very rarely are any of those students ever going to move on to become professional circus artists or do it in any kind of professional way. Most of them might not even continue the skills past the class, and that's totally fine because my background as a teaching artist in circus arts is, it comes from a guy named Reg Bolton. He was an Australian circus performer who retired from the circus and went to work as an elementary school teacher in the suburbs of Melbourne, Australia. And he was teaching a very low income school, and he was having a lot of trouble connecting with his students. And so he started bringing in some circus skills into his classroom. And so they would do circus skills in their classroom. And even though they were learning the circus skills, he found that they were actually improving in other ways as well. They were improving in their classwork, they were improving in reading, they were improving in their motor skills and developmental stuff. And so he wrote a PhD thesis called Why Circus Works. And it's all about these circus skills that we do and what's going on in your brain that practicing something like juggling or practicing something like a balance beam or something like that, they have applicable things going on in your brain that have nothing to do with the skill itself. And so that's one of the cool things that I love about circus. And the great thing that Reg did was that he gave us a little shorthand, literally a shorthand of basically his whole 400-page thesis on why circus works. He can explain by using this mnemonic device of your hand. So I love circus because of one particular thing, and that is what is represented by your index finger. So the index finger represents 1. You hold it up, it becomes the number 1. You can use it to point to individuals. You can point to yourself as an individual. And so the index finger represents individualism. And in circus, what's really cool is a lot of these skills have been around for thousands of years, some of them. And they still get put in shows because every new artist brings their own personality to it. They bring their own spin to it. And they can do this through costume, they can do it through music, they can do it through interpretation of the skill, they can lighting, I mean, anything, you name it. They can add humor sometimes, you name it. Whatever the artist wants to do to overlay onto the skill is what makes it interesting. So it's not just someone standing there for an hour juggling, right? You want to add a little bit of artistry to it. So that kind of creativity and individualism is represented by the index finger. And then if you look at the second finger, it's the tallest, So it kind of sticks its neck out above everybody else, and that represents taking healthy risks. It's very important to learn how to take risks in a healthy and safe space so that you can innovate, you can challenge yourself, you can learn to give yourself a boundary to push against by taking risks. And that'll lead you to bigger, bolder choices and more creative and innovative thinking. And that's what circus helps you to do. It helps you to learn how to take a risk. All of the equipment has a small amount of risk to it. And so practicing taking that risk helps you in a safe way, helps you to learn how to take risks in that kind of safe space. The other thing that the tall one reminds us is if it is taken by itself, standing up all by itself, it can become a sign of healthy disregard for authority, which I also like about circus. This one here, the third finger, that represents teamwork, because this one is not as tall as the rest of them. It's not the shortest, it's not the tallest, it's right there in the middle between all the rest of them. So it represents teamwork, and circus is all about teamwork and being supportive and helpful. The little one is the tiny one, and it wants to be as tall as the rest of them. So it represents aspiration. And in circus, we always want to aspire to be better. If you can juggle 3 balls, why not try juggling 4? If you can walk on a tightrope, why not try walking on a tightrope while juggling? If you can ride a unicycle straight across the room, start trying to practice idling in place. So there's always, with the circus skills, there's always something you can add. There's always a way to improve a little bit. And so that's another reason that we learn circus. The thumb, that makes the human hand one of the greatest tools that has ever been on this planet. And so it represents hard work. And that is something that is really important. We learn with circus as well, because no one is born knowing how to juggle. No one is born knowing how to walk on a tightrope. No one is born knowing how to do stilts. It's all something that you had to work hard to do. And I always say, anytime you go to the circus, anytime you see a circus performer as a street performer or on America's Got Talent or anywhere that you might see a circus performance or any expert performance, really, a musician, an actor, whatever, anybody that is really good at something started out being really bad at it. And they worked hard to get better and better and better and better. And so that is a key element of the circus. It takes a lot of hard work to get good at a skill, and you see immediate results, right? One of the things is that it's not nebulous, because if you're playing music, you might be like, oh, it could be better, but then another person might say, no, I thought that was good. And the same thing with painting, or same thing with an acting performance or something like that. There's a little bit of subjectivity on the part of the audience as to how you're improving. With circus, it's not like that. You improve in a very concrete way. No one can kind of juggle. No one is kind of walking on a tightrope. You're either doing it or you are not doing it, and it is very clear when you're not doing it. So that kind of hard work that circus brings out is really important, and it's really good for your brain as well. And then the last thing is the palm of your hand, which, if you give it a little tickle, is very sensitive. And so that reminds you to maintain a playful attitude as well. So those are the things, that the reasons why I teach circus. So we have individuality and creativity, healthy risk-taking with a little bit of disregard for authority in a healthy kind of way, teamwork, aspiration, hard work, and play and fun. So last week, we talked about juggling, and we made our own juggling equipment that we could use at home. And today, I wanted to talk about another circus skill that I really like and that I think that you can have a lot of fun with, and that is stilts. Now, stilts are really cool because they have a bit of a practical element to them as well. So there are lots of different kinds of stilts. If you've ever been to the circus, I'm sure you have seen a stilt walker there. They have stilt walkers at theme parks. They have stilt walkers at parties sometimes. It's a show-stopping circus skill, so people love to bring it out because it's just interesting to look at, and it's kind of awe-inspiring in people. It's one of the favorites or the go-tos for circus. But the other thing about stilts is they have a very practical aspect too. Stilts here in Southern California, there are some farm workers that walk around on stilts in orchards and things so that they can pick fruit off of trees without having to go up and down ladders all the time. Carpenters and painters will often use stilts if they have to paint something that's high or they're doing lots of work that's up high. So instead of going up and down, up and down, up and down the scaffolding, they teach themselves to walk around on the stilts, and then they can get up to those high places without all the extra effort that's involved. So those are two ways that stilts can be used. And then there are a couple of other ways that they can be used, and some of them I want to show you right now. So I have a couple of videos here. They're both about two minutes each, so they're not terribly long, but I do think they're really cool because they show you some ways that stilts are used outside of a performance thing. So this one is these are called the Moka Zombies. They are, it's a cultural stilt performance group out of Trinidad. All right, so that is one aspect of stilts. Really cool, the Moka Zombies. One second. Sorry, the video kept playing for me, so I was hearing some doctor talking. So the Moka Zombies, they're very, very cool. They perform at parades and festivals and things like that. If you ever get a chance to see that kind of troupe, they are really fantastic. And now another practical way that we were talking about of performing or utilizing stilts is this group of shepherds in France. And I'll share that one with you real fast as well. All right. So again, just a couple of different cool ways of utilizing stilts that I think are kind of interesting. But that's what we're talking about today, is stilts. So when we are talking about stilts, if you want to practice stilts at home, there are a couple of versions that are very easily purchased online. So these are very basic beginner stilts that I use with little kids that are, you know, anywhere from 4 to 7. This is what they start out on. And basically what happens is that you place your foot onto the stilt, and my hand will stand in for my foot. And then you hold the string up with your other hand, and then as you take a step, you pull that string along with you. And if you don't pull up on the string, if you just relax it and you don't pull up on the string when you take a step, obviously you will just step right off of the stilt. So you want to make sure that you keep your string pulled tight so that it gives you that that stilt underneath you when you put your foot down. And this is, like I said, this is your very, very basic beginner learning stilt. Those can be purchased online for, I think I got a set of 4 of these for $25, so not very expensive at all. But you can use this kind for practicing the game that I'm going to teach you all a little bit later on. There's also a fancier version, which is these. You see these here. This is sturdier and they're metal. They're a little more challenging because the base is a lot smaller, as you can see. But other than that, other than the base being a little smaller and the fact that these are a little bit taller and sturdier, the principle is the same. So on this one, you have the part of it that touches the floor, which is your base. The base is a little smaller on this one to make it a little more challenging, but they both have a base. They both have the part where you place your foot. So they have that. And then this one has this string that you hold onto to pull up in order to keep the stilt close to your foot. And this one has this bar with a handle at the end, which you also hold onto and pull up so that you keep the stilt against your foot as you walk so that you don't step off the stilt. So either one of these is good for learning how to do the basics of stilts. They do get trickier. There are stilts that are called peg stilts, and those are stilts that have no base at all. They just have a little stick on the end. Those are a little more challenging to learn, but they're better for standing in place, because in order to stay on those little pegs, you have to kind of bounce back and forth to keep yourself balanced. If you stand still, you kind of will go one way or the other because you're just trying to balance on a little piece of wood about this big around. And then there are painters stilts, which are like I was talking about earlier. They're used by painters often to do their work, but they are also used in performance in the circus. And painter stilts, they have nothing that you hold on to. So painter stilts are like this, but they don't have anything that connects up here that you hold on to. Basically, you just tie your foot onto the peg, and then your foot is tied to it, so it keeps your foot on there with the stilt so you don't step off of it. And that's how painter stilts works. Painter stilts are pretty challenging because you have nothing to hold on to. You can't control it with your upper body. So if you start to lose your balance, it's a little harder to catch your balance back. And you can also very easily make peg stilts or even this kind of stilt out of wood that you can get at any hardware store. So as I said, we'll be looking at this kind of stilt, the beginning learner stilt. So the part that you hold on to, this part, is kind of like training wheels. It gives you just a little bit of extra balance while you're first learning the skill. But, oh, and I said that these you can get a pack of 4 for about $25. These stilts, one pair is about $40. But they're very durable and sturdy. They'll last for years and years and years. So you might think to yourself, though, you know what? I don't think I can do $25. I don't think I can do $40. What else could I do with stuff that I might have around the house? Well, you can build this exact same kind of stilt very, very inexpensively if you have this lying around, a small can of paint, just like this. So all you have to do is, with the help of a grown-up, you're going to take a drill, and with the empty can, you want to make sure you're using an empty can, because if you are using a full can, then it's going to be really heavy and you're just going to clomp around, and B, it might when you fall over or something, it might come open and then you spill paint everywhere, and then that really stinks. So make sure you're dealing with an empty can of paint. And again, with the help of an adult, you're going to drill one hole near the top, about half an inch away from the top. And then you're going to drill a second hole exactly opposite it on the other side of the can. So you have a hole here and a hole here. And then you will grab yourself some string or some twine that you probably have around your house. Shoelace would even work if you have shoelace. And then you will pop the string into the hole, come up, and then tie it around with a knot like this little loop knot, so that you can slide this down to the can. And then when you pull on the string, it's just going to help make the knot tighter and tighter to the can. So this kind of knot works the best, this little loop knot here. And you tie that to your can. Then you do the same thing with the other can, like so. or no, sorry, you do it to the other hole. So you tie it, and so then you have something that looks like this, which looks very similar to this. So these paint cans, and if you even go to the hardware store, if they have empty cans, sometimes they will give them to you. So you could potentially acquire these for absolutely nothing, but some people have them around. And then if you have a shoelace or any kind of string around the house to keep them tied so that you can pull and lift them up with your feet as you go. And then that's how you make these kinds of stilts at home. Again, for next to nothing, for less than probably $5, even probably less than $3, you could get the stuff to make yourself a pair of training stilts at home, and it's super easy. And then you can begin practicing stilts and be on your way to doing those crazy Moka Zombie moves or walking around and dancing like some of those other performers that you saw in that first video there. But as we talked about last week, one of the ways that I like to practice skills is by making a game out of it. And there are some benefits to just practicing skills by rote, and sometimes I do that with students. I will let students just practice a skill. If it's stilts, it's like, okay, just walk to this spot and then walk back, and then keep going back and forth and just walk back and forth until you get it down pat. Same thing with juggling, like we were doing last week. You can just stand and juggle, and just drill it until you get better. But to me, it's more fun if you can practice a skill while doing a game or something a little more casual. So the game that I like to play with stilts is called Stilts Soccer. And the way that we play this is that you can do this one on your own, and I'll tell you about how to do that in a second. But typically it works best with a couple of people or more than one person at least, because if you have people in your family or friends that can come over and safely play together outside, you can get your Stilts Soccer going. So basically what you will do is you'll set up 2 cones about 6 feet apart from each other, and that will be your goal. So there'll be 2 cones about 6 feet apart from each other. That's your goal. And then one person hops on the stilts and stands in front of the goal, and they wait, and their job is to protect the goal while on the stilts. The other person will grab their stilts, and they're going to stand about 10 feet away from the goal, and they're going to hop on the stilts, and they will have a ball of some kind. It could be a soccer ball, it could be a beach ball, it could be any kind of inflatable ball like that. If you have a soccer ball, that's great. If you don't, any ball you have that's about yay big will be perfectly fine. So that person's going to step up to the ball, and they will kick the ball towards the goal, and then the goalie tries to block the goal and keep the ball from going in. And it's just like a free kick in soccer. I typically don't like to play the running around version, because once people start running around and they get excited about trying to get the ball and stuff like that, sometimes they can lose track of the safety precautions on stilts. But you can do this basic like free kick thing. And so if you have more than one person who is playing, one person is the goalie, one person kicks, and then whoever kicks, that person becomes the goalie, and then the next person goes and becomes the kicker. So you just practice that, and then whoever wins after a certain amount of rounds is the winner. And if you want, you can practice this by yourself. You just don't have a goalie. So you aim for the goal, and then there's no one there to block it. So that's how you can play by yourself. And what this does is it helps to get you practicing being on the stilts without thinking about being on the stilts. Because a lot of times what happens in these balance activities, stilts or rollabola or tightrope or walking globe, any of these kinds of activities where you have to do your balance, part of the problem is when you get in your head and you just start thinking too much about whether or not you're going off balance. Whereas if you give yourself the opportunity to think about something else, which is kicking the soccer ball, your body starts to learn how to compensate and make up for the loss of balance without you having to consciously think about it. And so that's what you want to do. You want your body to be able to have the muscle memory to walk around on those stilts so that you can wave to people or give a performance or remember choreography, whatever it is. You want the actual being on the stilts part to be the thing that you're thinking about the least. So playing this game helps you to not concentrate on the stilts. It helps you to concentrate on the game while your body learns how to be on the stilts. It also helps you to practice being on one foot on the stilts, because that's part of the challenge. When you're walking, that's when you start to try to go off balance, is when you have one foot in the air. When you're standing there just like on these two things, it's really pretty much just like you're standing on the ground. It's when you're walking that you start to mess with your balance a little bit. Now, the other challenge that you can present with this is that you can take either a die from a game. So I always keep on my desk here a die, just in case I need it for a game of some kind. But you can take the die from any game and roll it and say it lands on 5. So now you go to the part where you kick and you have to take 5 steps backwards. And you start 5 steps backwards, and before you can kick, you have to get on the stilts and walk those 5 steps on the stilts and then kick. Or if you roll, maybe it's 3 or 4 or whatever, you have to go that many paces back and you have to walk that many steps on the stilts before you kick. So that's just another little challenge that you can add to the game in that way. One quick tip that I will give you for practicing on stilts, if you want to practice this at home, is keep your head up. One of the things that I cannot stress enough is, I always say, when you're walking somewhere, and let's say I'm going over there to that wall, would I be more inclined to walk like this? Or would I be more inclined to walk like this? And the answer, of course, is the first one, because people don't normally stare down at their feet while they walk. They look up at where they are going, not down at their feet. So same thing goes on stilts, because when you are looking down at your feet and trying to walk on the stilts, you are already pitching yourself forward, as you can see. So there are 3 things that are important when we're trying to keep our balance on something. One is your vision. If you've ever tried to balance on one foot and close your eyes at the same time, it makes it a lot more challenging to keep your balance. So if you can stand on one foot and keep your balance perfectly fine, try closing your eyes and see how much more challenging and how much more compensating and readjusting you have to do. It's very challenging. And so your eyes are very important. Inside your ear, there's some tiny little bones and some fluid that also helps you to keep your balance. And then the third thing that's really important for your balance is your big toe. So your big toe, when you're standing up and when you're walking, is doing a lot of work that you don't even realize it's doing. Your big toe is really helping you to not be doing this constantly, because your big toe kind of offers that stability there. Now, when you are standing on stilts like this, and your big toe is off of the stilt, and you are leaning forward, you're doing this. So you're already throwing yourself off balance. Your big toe doesn't have anything to press against to keep you upright. So if you keep your head up, that works best. And one of the ways that I have found to help learn that technique is if you have a book at your house, you can balance the book on your head like so. And this gives you the proper alignment for any of the balancing stuff that we do. So what I want is for my head to be over my shoulders to be over my hips, and my hips to be over my ankles. Now my knees, sometimes I have to move my knees around a little bit. Sometimes I have to move my arms around a little bit. So notice I don't include those in this alignment, but your head is over your shoulders over your hips, and your hips are over your ankles. And this gives you fantastic alignment for what you need to do whenever you're doing any of the balancing activities. And as you can see, if I slip out of alignment at all, if I start to want to look down at my feet, the book comes off. So the book tells me when I'm losing my alignment. So that's a good thing to practice too, if you want to practice with something on your head like a book to keep your alignment so that when you're walking, you're doing that. The other bit of advice I can give you when practicing stilts is if you feel like you have to fall, just jump off. Just jump off the stilts. It's totally fine. As I said earlier in this lesson, everyone who has ever been good at stilts started off being bad at them. So they've fallen off a lot. So falling off the stilts is part of learning how to do the stilts. And so when you feel like you might be about to fall, just jump off, because if you're on stilts and you start to feel yourself going off balance and you just step off of them and get your balance again and then get back on and keep practicing, you're in a lot more control over the situation of your balance and of your fall. Whereas if you keep trying to keep your balance and then you let yourself fall over, then you have a lot more control, or I'm sorry, you have a lot less control of falling off of those stilts in that way. So those are your two big safety reminders for the stilts. The other thing, this is just a helpful practice, is to try to keep the middle of your foot over the stilt. Because if you are too far back and you're standing up on your toes like this, then it makes it really hard to keep your balance, because it's very hard to keep your balance when you're standing on your toes without being on stilts. And then similarly, if you are too far forward on the stilt, it makes it very easy to just slip right off of it, and that can sometimes lead you to fall. And we want to avoid that whenever we can. So that is about it that I have for today. So we have a way that we can find some stilts online. If you want to buy practice stilts online, you can get the beginner ones, you can get the intermediate ones, but either way, those are available online. If you don't want to purchase them online, you can very easily make them out of stuff that you have just lying around the house, which I always love, is when you can recycle something or reuse it to make it into something else instead of just turning it into trash again. And then once you have that, you can practice your stilts, get your balance, get your alignment, and then once you feel comfortable walking around on them a little bit, and it shouldn't take, with these kinds of beginner stilts, it shouldn't take you too long before you feel comfortable on them. And then you can play Stilts Soccer, which is a great way to practice your stilt skills and build up those muscles and get that muscle memory, so you can move on to the stilts where you have nothing to hold on to and you're just walking around on the stilts. So that's our lesson for today. As I said, we're wrapping a few minutes early, but before we go, does anyone have any questions or anything that they want to share before we move on? Oh, Tater, I was going to ask, I don't know what the acronym NGL means when you said NGL looks like a lot of fun. Okay. That's a new one on me. Thank you for teaching me that one. Yeah, and when I say, does anyone have anything to share, it doesn't necessarily have to relate to what we're doing. If you have some drawings that you've been working on or anything like that that you want to share with the group, that's fine. If not, we'll call it a day a little bit early today. Oh, I see Kat has a hand raised.
Hold on, I have to actually go there.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, the lighting in here is bad, but this is Domino Art I made. I'm not gonna knock it down just for the sake of I want to take a video when I do, but
Right. Well, that's really cool.
yeah.
That's neat. I used to love doing domino patterns like that when I was a kid. I hadn't even thought about that until I was just looking at your thing there. But yeah, my sister and I used to do that all the time when we were kids. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Excellent. Anybody else? We have time for maybe one more person. Anybody wants to share anything? If not, we will call it a day. All right. Well, we are finishing off about 10 minutes early for today. So I just want to thank everybody. Make sure, if you haven't in a while, I know this group of people is all folks who are regular attendees. You've heard the spiel about going to the donation page, but if you haven't in a while, drop us a little bit. It helps us to keep these classes free and make these offerings available. So thanks everybody for being around today. And next week we will be possibly talking about some more circus stuff as well. So thanks for joining me, and I hope that you have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you,
Bye,
bye.
everyone.